Do you ever wonder if that expensive hydrogen water bottle is actually doing anything? Or why some people swear by their $5,000 alkaline water machine while others say it's a scam? Here's the truth. Most people are confused about hydrogen because even chemistry professors get it wrong, according to Tyler Lebaron. This week, I sat down with Tyler Lebaron, one of the world's leading hydrogen researchers and the scientist who proved alkaline water machines work, but for different reasons than the pH. He has published studies showing that hydrogen gas, not pH levels, create health benefits. He's also revealed why 12 people in Japan have been rushed to the hospital with facial injuries from hydrogen machines and hydrogen inhalation. After years of research, Tyler has discovered why most hydrogen products don't actually work. People focus on the wrong numbers, and we're going to learn in this show what those numbers are. They use dangerous machines or sip their water too slowly to get any benefits. Within minutes of understanding this, you'll know exactly how to get hydrogen's benefits without spending thousands. Learn why Tyler refused to endorse any products for 16 years and what changed his mind about hydrogen and how it actually works in your body, and the simple methods that beat expensive machines. Tyler, thanks for being here today. You flew in from Utah. You were here for a race. You went to the top of the USA building.
It's the U.S. Bank Tower.
The U.S. Bank Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the tallest tower in Southern California?
Yeah, I think it's the tallest one west of the Mississippi. I think there's actually one more in 2017 was built, but this is like an iconic, very tall building. And yeah, they had a race. It's basically a tower running, right? And they had, I don't know,
so you're running upstairs.
A couple thousand people. Well,
the circular...
trying to run. Yeah. You're just going up the...
That must be kind of hard to get around
floors.
people because it's a tighter space, right?
Yes, that's actually why they have different categories. So they have like an open class, and then they have an elite category. In the elite group, which I went in, they would start you out at the very beginning, and then you start out in waves. So You're not really passing really anybody.
Oh, so it's more of a timing thing.
Yeah, because you have a chip. You have a bib, right, with a chip on it. And so it starts as soon as you pass the stairwell and as soon as you get it, right? So, yeah, it was actually kind of fun because then my goal is then to try to pass somebody even though they started ahead of me. Because if I can do that, then I'm doing pretty good with my time.
Oh, yeah. I would say that it can get pretty savage, though, right? I mean, you're like trying to pass somebody in a really tight area where you can trip. You're not just running, you're going up steps.
Yeah, it can be difficult, but but at the same time, people can go try it, get on the Stairmaster, whatever, and see how fast you go before you get tired.
Yeah.
We're talking about races that will, like this will take an average person around 20, 25 minutes to complete. People aren't running; they're doing like
sprinting up Stairmaster.
If you really want to try that,
give me 5 minutes and I'm done. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying is with this, they're typically most people are going to be kind of just walking.
Yeah,
they're not sprinting because you're going for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Could you know anybody who can sprint for 20 minutes?
Upstairs?
Like,
really.
No, go to your Stairmaster. They're going to be like 60 steps per minute or 70 steps per minute. So it's not too bad. Your elite levels, they're going to be over 100 steps per minute, 120, 170 or more potentially steps per minute. That is the max of these Stairmasters go. And so it can get challenging when you're going fast, I guess.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was fun, though. I was happy with my performance. So
yeah, you got first place, right?
Yes, I did. So I'm happy.
Yeah,
I was able to. Yeah, in first place with the in the elite group.
Yeah. So. And you also participate in arm wrestling competitions, right? And also like one-handed pull up, chin up.
Yeah, I mean, I do arm wrestling. I've just started doing that a bit ago, and I've really enjoyed it because I've always loved lifting weights, and I've always loved doing pull-ups. So, yeah, I can do, one-arm pull-up. And that's kind of transitions over to arm wrestling as well. Because when you're arm wrestling, you want to be able to pull the person towards you, right? And you can lock it in, and then you can use your body and your you're pulling. And that's actually one of the funny things too, is sometimes when people see real arm wrestling competition, they'll see people like kind of using their body and like, wait, that's not fair. You're using your body, but actually there's no other way to do it because you pull in and then you use your body trying to pull down. If you're not strong enough to use your body, your arm just stays here as you go like this, right?
Yeah.
Because most people aren't strong enough to, curl their body weight with one arm or something, right? So anyway, if you can use your body, then that means you're super strong to be able to do that, right? And anyway, it's kind of digression, but it's something that's fun anyway.
It's fun to watch. When you were here for the Hydrate Summit, a bunch of the scientists and professors and PhDs were all trying to arm wrestle you, and that was some good comic relief.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, it's just a fun sport.
So I'm sure the listeners have this question. Are you hydrogen fueled? I mean, how do you get first place? Is hydrogen a part of your regimen? Or?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that the research, we published a number of clinical studies showing that hydrogen has some ergogenic or sports performance enhancing effects. And so, yeah, I do that. I don't know how much, to what extent it really helps, but I think that the research suggests that it's something worth trying.
Yeah. All right. So you're one of the world's leading experts and researchers in hydrogen. Tell the listeners really quickly, what is hydrogen and why is it beneficial to our bodies?
Yeah, let's go back to the basics. So we think about the periodic table of elements and we see that hydrogen is number 1 on the periodic table, right? That's the hydrogen atom. And the hydrogen atom is all alone. It's just 1 proton and 1 electron. And it's not going to stay like that by itself. It wants to find a partner. It's going to react with something. And that hydrogen atom will typically react with pretty much anything else on the periodic table of elements. For example, it can react with oxygen and it can form things like water, because water is H2O. So 2 hydrogen atoms combined with the oxygen and formed water, right? That hydrogen atom could also react with a carbon atom and form carbohydrates, right? Or it can react with nitrogen to form ammonia, and so on. That hydrogen atom could also react with another hydrogen atom to form a molecule of hydrogen called molecular hydrogen. So you'd have 2 hydrogen atoms that are covalently bonded together, and that's the H2 molecule, hydrogen gas. So a lot of people, when they hear about hydrogen, they think about a hydrogen ion like H+, which is responsible for pH, or they think of H- or hydride, which is a potent reducing agent used in industrial organic chemistry for organic synthesis or reduction reactions of different organic molecules. But we're just talking about hydrogen gas. This is the alternative energy source. You think about like your cars and hydrogen as the fuel, rocket fuel, right? Hydrogen, oxygen combustion, the Hindenburg. This is hydrogen gas. And it turns out that although it is flammable, it is therapeutic as well. And in fact, you can inhale hydrogen gas at levels that are not flammable, but are still therapeutic. And that's really what ignited the research on hydrogen gas back in 2007. And you could also take the hydrogen gas and dissolve it into water. We call that hydrogen water. And you can drink it. So the water just becomes the carrier of the gaseous molecule. You drink it, and you get hydrogen gas in your system from drinking hydrogen water.
Wow. Thank you for breaking that down, because almost all of us have taken high school chemistry and we know what hydrogen is. We know it's on the periodic table. But has that ever really been broken down in that way, where it's like, oh, it's not just the hydrogen atom, it's the hydrogen molecule, the H2 gas that is what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's critical too, because even many chemistry professors, when they hear the term hydrogen water, they automatically assume water already has hydrogen in it, just like all of us, right? We know water already has hydrogen. So we have to define.
So why do we need more hydrogen if we're already drinking hydrogen or we're breathing? Okay, so
that's what we have to clarify, that we're not talking about the hydrogen that's already attached to the water molecule. It's a totally different chemical species.
Yeah,
it's hydrogen gas that is simply dissolved in the water.
Yes.
And there was just an article published in some news media with a chemistry professor who basically debunked hydrogen water. And everything he said was completely accurate, only that it was a straw man position in the sense that he went on and said, water already has hydrogen, basically.
So why do you need to drink it?
Yeah, why would you,
or why would you need to add it to
additional,
water?
Right?
Yeah.
Because he fundamentally misunderstood. We're not talking about the hydrogen that's already on there. And it's like saying, why do we need to breathe oxygen? Why do we need to breathe the air? Why don't we just drink water? Water already has oxygen in it, right?
Yeah.
H2O.
Right.
So why do we need to drink water? Why do we need to breathe air? It's because, of course, that oxygen is bound up in that hydrogen, right? We need the air. We need oxygen gas, right? How come we can't just eat carbohydrates, right, to get the oxygen that's in the carbohydrate or in the fat? Right?
Because it's already there.
It's already bound together. It's chemically bound up. You have to get the gas.
Yeah.
And you breathe that. It's the same idea.
It's funny. We've known each other quite a while now. And I think that was one of my first questions that I had for you was, wait a minute. If we're already drinking water that has this H2 molecule in it, why do I need to add it to the water? Or why would I need to use a tablet to
produce it
if it's already there? It's just sometimes it doesn't make sense.
And I think it makes it more complicated because the chemical formula for water is H2O, right? That's the chemical formula. You could also say HOH would actually be more helpful.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the chemical structure, you have hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. So the hydrogens are bound to the oxygen, right?
Yeah.
And so it's HOH. That's the water. And yet we say, to
H2O.
make it simple, H2O.
Yeah.
Because there's just 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen.
That's
so we're already
confusing.
saying H2.
Yes.
Oh. And then when we say, well, hydrogen gas or H2, we're like, but there's already H2 in water, right? H2O.
But they're not bound that way.
They're not bound that way. It's not hydrogen.
The covalent bonds are different. It's not the hydrogen covalently bound to the hydrogen. It's the hydrogen bound to the oxygen.
To the oxygen.
Yeah, so that's the distinction. Okay, so now that we understand that, thank you for explaining that. Why do we care about getting extra H2?
Yeah.
In our body.
So it turns out that, again, you don't get extra in terms of from water because water does not provide you any hydrogen gas. There's no hydrogen gas in water. Actually, technically, there is a very small amount because the air that we're breathing, the ambient air that we're inhaling right now contains
water.
It does contain some water, but I was saying it does contain some hydrogen gas. The air we're breathing is about 78% nitrogen gas, about 21% oxygen gas, and the rest is all the other gases, like some helium gas, some CO2 gas, some methane gas, and some hydrogen gas. About 0.0000055% of the atmosphere is hydrogen gas.
Okay, so we are breathing in hydrogen gas, but now we're looking at concentration.
Right, so we can get a therapeutic level of hydrogen gas because that's so low. You can barely detect that. 0.00055% is too low. So what happens is that all the air dissolves into water. So if we have a glass of water on the table, then the gas molecules in the air will dissolve into the water. And that's why you can measure oxygen gas in the water. That's why fish will use oxygen gas. So if you have a tank, a fish tank, well, how are the fish breathing? Like, how are they getting the oxygen? Because they get the gas from the water, from the air, dissolves into the water. And you've noticed sometimes with fish tanks, they'll have like a little bubbler where you actually bubble the air into the water tank. Why do they do that? So that the fish can get oxygen.
Builds the concentration of oxygen.
Yeah, it tries to get the oxygen dissolved into the water. And then the fish has the gills and will take up that oxygen gas, the oxygen molecules, and use it.
Okay.
And so your fish will die if you don't have enough oxygen in the fish tank. So by adding one of these bubblers just to get the air to go through it, you're bubbling 21% oxygen into the water, and then you're going to get an oxygen concentration of about 8 milligrams per liter, 8 ppm. So you could take an oxygen meter and measure the concentration of oxygen in the water, and you'll get around 8 milligrams per liter. right? So all the gas, you could also measure nitrogen gas, and you'll see there's nitrogen gas dissolved in the water because there's 78% nitrogen in the atmosphere. There'll also be a very small amount of hydrogen gas dissolved in the water, about less than a nanogram. I mean, it's not enough to be therapeutic at all, but that's because there's some hydrogen gas in the atmosphere. But a very small amount, of course, that'll be dissolved in the water.
So let's talk about a couple things. One, what is a therapeutic dose? Then we'll talk about how do you get a therapeutic dose, because there's different modalities from drinking it to inhaling it to bathing in it. We can talk about those. But first, let's talk about why do we care about a therapeutic dose? What does a therapeutic dose do for us biologically as humans?
Yeah, so it turns out that this hydrogen molecule, when it's ingested in the body, is able to exert benefits to the cells in a number of different ways. For example, it does have antioxidant-like effects. So we know that as you breathe oxygen, which is an oxidizer, you create oxidative free radicals, oxygen radicals, reactive oxygen species. And these are bad if there's too many of them, and they're highly reactive, okay? Well, hydrogen gas acts as an antioxidant and helps to regulate or modulate the amount of reactive oxygen species that are being produced, the amount of damage that they can do, or the amount of benefits they can do. Because it turns out that these reactive oxygen species have both beneficial effects and harmful effects. And we want the beneficial effects and not the harmful effects.
Mm-hmm.
And molecular hydrogen is able to modulate this entire process. And typically we see in many of the studies that has an antioxidant-like effect, because often with various disease conditions, pollutants, toxins, diseases I mentioned, you have an excess amount of free radicals, reactive oxygen species, that cause oxidative damage. And so molecular hydrogen is able to decrease the amount of oxidative stress that is occurring and therefore protect the cells so they function normally, right? So that's going to be a big one right there, is just helping to modulate the whole free radical reactive oxygen species. We call this redox or oxidation reduction, redox regulation. And that's really where molecular hydrogen has shown to have a lot of benefit. And this is from not just cell culture and animal studies, but a number of clinical studies as well, showing molecular hydrogen has the potential benefits to decrease things like oxidative stress and inflammation. And that in turn, when you look at specific disease models or conditions where hydrogen has been shown to help with areas like stroke, neurological conditions, with cardiovascular areas, metabolic areas like metabolic syndrome, exercise performance that we talked about. Anyway, there's actually over 200 human and animal disease models for which hydrogen has been studied and has essentially shown to have therapeutic potential in there. Because again, it's regulating these areas of oxidative stress, inflammation, at the mitochondrial level to help improve the efficiency of the mitochondria so you can get enough energy for your cells to function correctly and carry out all the other metabolic processes that are needed, and so on. So in short, molecular hydrogen is able to help your cells function optimally and correct imbalances in oxidative stress, inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function.
You said something really powerful. Hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, is a selective for reactive oxygen species. Not all antioxidants are selective.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think that's a key component. Because you could think, well, vitamin C is an antioxidant, glutathione's an antioxidant, but we can overdose on vitamin C. We can overdose on glutathione, but you can never overdose on hydrogen. So tell us, let's go a little bit deeper into that picture.
Yeah, this is very important. And a lot of research has indeed shown that, number one, when you take high doses of synthetic antioxidants, typically the outcome is not favorable. Not only a neutral response, but a negative response. In fact, a number of these studies, they had to stop because those taking these high doses of antioxidants were dying and getting cancer faster than the placebo groups. So if we think about mechanistically what might be going on, we can recognize that, as I mentioned, these free radicals that are produced, yes, they can be bad for you, but they can also be and are good for you because they are what mediate some very important signaling effects inside the cells. Our bodies are specifically designed for oxidation. They're specifically designed to take oxygen and burn basically food that we eat, right? And in that process, produce highly reactive oxygen species. And those reactive oxygen species have very specific signaling effects that they activate different receptors, activate different DNA, portions of our DNA, for example. And that in turn mediates a lot of benefits. Exercise is a good example. When we exercise, we breathe a lot more oxygen. And in that process, we create a lot more free radicals. But those free radicals in turn activate our cellular self-defense system, such as this NRF2 keep one pathway. And when this NRF2 gets activated, it induces a higher cytoprotection or cell protective effect for all of our cells. Regulates over 200 different cytoprotective enzymes and proteins. And exercise is therefore key for longevity and for health. One of the reasons is because it can activate this pathway, and then you can have a higher detoxification antioxidation system set up. But it was activated initially because of the free radicals that were precisely produced. So if you were to somehow not get that activation because you blunted those free radicals by either not exercising or by taking high doses of antioxidants or some other method,
or both,
then you're not going to get that activation, and therefore you're not going to get the benefits of that activation, right? So it's very important that we realize that free radicals have very important roles in our body, but we need to have the right concentration at the right location for the right duration and the right species of those free radicals. And other antioxidants are not discriminate. They are simple radical scavengers where they can readily donate an electron to pretty much any free radical. Vitamin C, glutathione, and so on, they are able to scavenge or react with these free radicals very quickly, neutralizing them. Therefore, it prevents them from having harmful effects or beneficial effects. And if they don't have beneficial effects, that ends up being a harmful effect.
Yeah.
And this is one of the mechanistic reasons why high doses of these antioxidants aren't a good idea. And they, like I said, they are not discriminate, whereas molecular hydrogen is. So to put it even more simply, and this has been shown, it's very simple to demonstrate this. If you took vitamin C and some other antioxidants, and you put that in the same container as some free radicals, right? Say nitric oxide, superoxide, say other reactive oxygen species, hydrogen peroxide, let's say, you would see that all of those would react with vitamin C and these other antioxidants. But you put those together with hydrogen gas, there's no reaction. There's no reaction. And in fact, even take this further, oxygen is an oxidizer, right? If you took an apple and you cut it in half, it turns brown. Why? Because of the oxygen in the atmosphere. The oxygen is literally reacting with the antioxidant type molecules on the apple and they turn it brown.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what's happening. So we can literally see in real time that these are indiscriminate antioxidants. That apple that you're eating is indiscriminate. It is going to neutralize all free radicals. Of course, it's not a problem to eat apples because you are not eating, a million of them all in one, right? You are getting those antioxidants at the right dose, the right concentration. Your body can regulate everything. I'm just trying to illustrate that this is proof how easily it is for the apple
to visualize it.
Yeah, exactly. How easy it is for the apple to react with any free radicals, right?
Yeah.
Now, in contrast, if you took hydrogen gas and oxygen gas and you put them in a container, a balloon, let's say, you can literally put hydrogen gas and oxygen gas in a balloon and nothing will happen because they're not going to react.
They play nicely together.
They play nice unless you have a spark. A flame, something, then it overcomes the activation energy. Yeah. And now it's a major explosion, which we'll get into because there are some various serious risks of the flammability hydrogen gas.
Yes.
Because it is a fuel.
And now that it's becoming more popular, this is the topic to bring up.
Yeah.
Because many people are using these inhalation devices, and we need to be careful.
Yeah, people have been injured with that. So we'll get to that. So this helps to illustrate, again, if you took oxygen gas and put it on an apple, the apple turns brown because it's not discriminate. But if you take it with hydrogen gas, there's no reaction because they don't react unless you overcome the activation energy from with a catalyst or a flame or something like that. Okay, so point is, hydrogen gas, you can't overdose it in terms of throwing off your whole antioxidant balance because it can only react with the most toxic radicals, such as the hydroxyl radical. We don't want any hydroxyl radicals in our body. And when that reaction happens, it just makes water anyways. So that's a cool thing about hydrogen. There's no toxic radical reaction or something like that. It's not going to neutralize the beneficial free radicals and actually can help regulate our entire endogenous antioxidant homeostasis, including the activation of the NRF2 pathway.
So you can't overdose on it. It's something that you take in, and then your body's going to utilize what it needs and let go of what it doesn't.
I mean, it's just a gas, and so once you inhale it or you drink it, it's just going to work its way through the system, and you're going to exhale it out.
Yeah.
So after you drink hydrogen water, within about an hour, all the hydrogen gas is out of your body. It doesn't accumulate in the tissues or do anything like that. So it's not like going to come in like, all right, looks like the work here is done, and then move to the next one. Like, okay, I was used enough, and now I'm going to go out. It's just diffusing through your system.
So should you take hydrogen gas every hour? Would that be something that would be beneficial?
It's possible, but we need more research, right?
Yeah.
But we also see that hydrogen gas, it is able to modulate gene expression. And so in some studies, one specifically, when they administered hydrogen gas 24/7 as an animal study, 24/7 exposure to hydrogen gas, because their cage was exactly like 2% hydrogen gas, the benefits tended to diminish and then go away. Almost like your body adapted to the presence of hydrogen gas.
Yeah.
Further indicating it's not just like a radical scavenging effect. It's really affecting your gene expression and how your cells operate. Similar to exercise. It's not good to exercise 24/7.
Yeah.
Like you actually need to rest and recover and so hydrogen in some ways is almost like a mild stressor, a therapeutic stressor. We call this a hormetic agent, right? The process of hormesis. And so it has a hormetic-like effect where it's able to induce these changes at the cellular level and provide these benefits. And so it may not be the best to take it every hour because you want to have the intermittent exposure.
So that's why I asked this question, because I witness many people who are excited about their new hydrogen water bottle. And there's been many people that have come to our parties and events, and they're just drinking the hydrogen water every hour. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Maybe that's the best way to go. Maybe it's not. Like I said, from this one animal study, it was just one, right? The 24/7 exposure wasn't as effective as an intermittent exposure, right? And in that case, they actually administered hydrogen gas once every 15 minutes every hour, because it would basically have a short spike and then go out of the body. Short spike, go out of the body, right? So I don't think that drinking hydrogen water in this way is necessarily problematic, but one of the concerns is actually you're not ever getting a therapeutic dose of hydrogen. Because if you were to just take a sip of the hydrogen water and drink it over the space of an hour, then how many hydrogen molecules, how many milligrams are you actually ingesting per sip? Not very much. And because hydrogen gas doesn't store in the tissues, doesn't store in the body, basically the rate of hydrogen gas entering the body is equal or slower than the rate of hydrogen gas leaving the body. And therefore, if the rate entering is equal as the rate leaving, then the concentration never increases.
Yeah.
If the concentration in the cells never increase,
it's a placebo.
It can't do anything for you. Right? So this is why sometimes with these bottles or tablets or whatever, it may be better to drink it all at once.
Yeah.
Get the entire dose so you can increase the concentration of hydrogen in the cells to a therapeutic level, and then it'll go back down.
So what is a therapeutic level, Tyler?
So typically, when the cell culture studies, we want to see a minimum of several micromolar concentration at the cellular level. In order to do that by drinking hydrogen water, you'll need to drink at least a half a milligram, get a half a milligram of hydrogen. That is the dose, right? And ideally, maybe even several milligrams of hydrogen, maybe more towards an optimal dose. Because again, it depends on the individual, what condition we're looking at, what specific biomarker we're looking at, right? All these things. So we can't just say, okay, this specific dose or whatever. Like, there's so many things to consider, because maybe for one individual or one situation, only a half a milligram is needed. But in somewhere else, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 milligrams or more are needed, right?
So to be on the safe side, since we can't overdose on it in a setting or one sitting, we might as well err on the cautious side, or not cautious side, but getting more, right? So we want to do higher concentration.
In terms of hydrogen water, yes, because there's a couple of things to consider. Higher doses tend to be as effective as or more effective than lower doses for drinking hydrogen water. And again, because when we drink the hydrogen water, it's going to diffuse throughout our body. A 70, 150 pound person is going to have around 40 liters of water. So now you have to dilute that hydrogen molecule by all the body water as well. So the concentration goes down even lower. You want to make sure you're still getting a several micromolar concentration in order to reach that therapeutic level of hydrogen. So for this reason, there could be benefits. Another benefit of having a higher doses of hydrogen is you can reach higher cellular levels of molecular hydrogen in the distal or further portions of your cells, because most of the hydrogen water, when you drink it, the hydrogen gas is going to be expelled out the lungs, and not a lot of it is going to get past the lungs and go into the systemic blood. So if you have a higher dose, you can carry more of that hydrogen molecules, a higher fraction, a higher percent, to other tissues, and therefore get a higher level, a higher therapeutic amount of hydrogen.
So let's talk about the research in the modalities of getting hydrogen gas. So we know the water bottles are really popular right now. Then we've got the hydrogen tablets, which aren't actually hydrogen. It's there's a chemical process that's producing that H2 molecule there. And then we have inhalation machines, even bathtubs that you can sit in and immerse yourself in. What's the best way to increase the concentration of hydrogen in our body to a therapeutic level?
So, of course, the best way to increase the total hydrogen concentration would be through inhalation. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the most effective way either, because they're different routes of administration and they have different effects. And so the two most common is hydrogen water and hydrogen inhalation. And when you drink hydrogen water, you are going through the gut, basically, and that's going to have more systemic effect on the microbiome and inducing second messenger systems and getting a lot of benefits in those areas. Versus inhalation, that's going to diffuse into the blood, and it doesn't get carried by hemoglobin or anything. It just dissolves in the blood, according to what we know as Henry's law, just a simple diffusion coefficient, or the coefficient of the concentration. So when you inhale molecular hydrogen, then it just dissolves into the blood and the plasma, and then it gets carried out through all the tissues. And that's going to reach a higher concentration in different portions of the brain, but you may not be getting as certain effects on, say, the microbiome or other areas that you do from the hydrogen water. So it's really an apple to orange comparison. And so maybe eventually we'll have enough strong clinical data to say that for this condition, hydrogen water is more effective. And for this condition, inhalation is more effective. Right now, we don't have that type of data, and both of them are a good idea to do. But when we talk about the hydrogen water, I think it's probably important we clarify. We talked about the dose a little bit. We want to get at least a half a milligram, maybe several milligrams per dose. But how do you know what that is? Because there's a confusion between the concentration and the dose, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who will talk about this, like hydrogen water bottles or hydrogen tablets being 5, 10 ppm or something. What does that even mean? Maybe we should just break that down a little bit.
Let's break that down for sure.
So typically, I discourage the use of ppm or parts per million because it's difficult to really conceptualize what that means. So, but to break it down, parts per million has several different meanings to it. It can be a ratio of like molecule to molecule, right? So if you have like 1 ppm for every one molecule, you have 1 molecule for every million molecules, right? That's a ratio. In other cases, the ppm is a weight ratio. So for every 1 gram of the substance, there's a gram of substance for every million grams of the substance, right? That's a weight per weight ratio. And with hydrogen, it's weight per weight. So we talk about ppm, like 1 milligram, or 1 ppm, that's weight per weight. And so therefore 1 ppm is equivalent to 1 milligram per liter. So we should just not use ppm, and I wish the industry would change completely and never use the term ppm and just use milligram per liter. Because now we can start to understand what a milligram is. Like we know what a milligram is. We know what a gram is, right? But even more than that, we need to go away from even talking about concentration because we don't care about the concentration. We care about the dose. And the concentration is how much of a substance is dissolved per unit of liquid, right? Versus the dose is the total amount you're taking. So let's think about coffee, for example. There's caffeine in coffee. How many milligrams of caffeine are there in coffee? Well, it's
what's the dose?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How much of the coffee are you drinking?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have 1 cup? Did you have 5 cups today?
Right. Everyone understands that, right? And even the question, how many milligrams of caffeine are in there? That's asking what is the dose? What is the dose that's in the cup of coffee?
I say that as I yawn. Ooh.
Yeah, right.
I don't drink coffee.
But for most people, a lot of people drink coffee, so I hope this analogy makes sense. But typically, a cup of coffee has around 100 milligrams of caffeine.
A cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So you're saying like an 8 ounce.
Yeah, 8 ounces, right?
Yeah.
Let's say it has 100 milligrams in there, right?
Okay.
Now, then you have what's it called? An espresso. Okay. Well, what has
there's less water in it.
Yeah,
there's still the high concentration.
Yes, but it's a higher concentration of caffeine, right? So if we talk about just concentration with a cup of coffee, you're going to be around like 400 milligram per liter or 400 ppm. We'll use the ppm.
Yeah.
400 ppm versus an espresso, 1200 ppm.
Okay.
Which one has more caffeine? Well, 1200 ppm or 400 ppm? It's like, well, obviously the 1200 ppm because it's higher, but that's not true.
Yeah.
Because the espresso was only 1 ounce, right? Like 100 something milliliters. That's it. And so there's actually only about 70 or 80 milligrams of caffeine in the espresso versus 100 milligrams in the cup of coffee. So this is why it's so confusing when people just marketing these bottles and tablets, 7 ppm, 8 ppm, 10 ppm, 12 ppm. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
You know, if it's like trying to buy your cup of coffee and it says like 5,000
Do you want the
ppm.
venti or the 8 ounce? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
Yeah, you need to know how many cups of coffee
of how much
are you going to be drinking, right? So this is why with a lot of these bottles, if you do the math, if it's claims to be let's say 5 ppm or something, and the bottle is 500 milliliters, then the dose will be half that concentration, right? So 5 ppm is 5 milligram per liter. And that's concentration. Now I have to convert that to dose. It's a half a liter. So therefore, it's only going to be 2.5 milligrams of hydrogen.
Okay.
But often those bottles are even smaller, like only 250 milliliters or 8 ounces, right?
And the tablets are about 5.
Depending on the volume of water.
Well, that's why in my book I say I put it in 4 ounces of water. I put it in a small amount of water.
The tablet
and just shoot it.
The tablets will provide between 3 to 5 milligrams of hydrogen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so 5 is on the higher end.
No, just 3 to 5 milligrams. That's the dose.
Okay.
3 to 5 milligrams of hydrogen. Now, let's say 5 milligrams of hydrogen. If you dissolve 5 milligrams of hydrogen in a liter and you drink the entire liter, you get 5 milligrams of hydrogen. If you dissolve 5 milligrams of hydrogen in a half a liter,
you still get 5 milligrams.
You still get 5 milligrams, but the concentration is 10 milligrams per liter.
Right.
We can keep going.
It doesn't matter. You're still getting the same amount of hydrogen in your body.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's the same idea. Now, it's a little bit more complicated with like the tablets, just because if you go down to just say 1 milliliter, right? You dissolve a tablet into 1 milliliter, right? Then that's going to say, oh, you should be getting 1,000, concentrated 1,000 ppm, and therefore still get 10 milligrams. But that's impossible. You can't. You're not going to dissolve that much gas in there, right? That's way beyond feasibility. And so the lower the volume you have with, like, say, the tablets, then you won't get as high dose. So ideally, something closer to 4 to 8 ounces or something, 16 ounces even, is going to give you an optimal volume of water where you get the highest dose. You can retain the most, right? But so the point is, we really need to be focusing on what is the dose of hydrogen.
Yeah.
So if you see a bottle or a tablet or whatever, even the tablets, it really doesn't matter, because it's funny to me, because again, you could take that tablet and you could dissolve a tablet in a liter of water. I mean, you do it in 10 liters of water, or you can do it in 2 ounces of water, and your concentration would be all over the place. But the dose is all going to be the same, right? And I think about, like, your food labels, for example. If you look at the back of the label, it tells you how many milligrams there are, right? 200 milligrams of sodium, right? 50 milligrams of vitamin C.
Per serving.
Per serving, right? And it tells you what it is. So, if you drink this, is what you're getting.
Yeah.
And then, but with hydrogen, they don't do that.
Right.
They just give a concentration. Could you imagine going and looking at, like, just concentrations like protein, 10,000 grams per liter, or like 10,000 ppm or whatever? Like, doesn't even make any sense. So we have to think about the dose. And I think that's also why there's so much confusion about hydrogen water in general, because they think, oh, this entire water is hydrogen water. They think, like, literally somehow that the water itself is hydrogen water without realizing it's just water.
Yeah.
With hydrogen gas dissolved in it.
Yes. Yeah.
And therefore, you don't care about the water, the volume of water. We care about the hydrogen gas dissolved in the water.
Right.
The water is just the carrier.
The concentration of hydrogen gas in the water, yes, it's the carrier. So it's kind of a moot point how much water there is in there.
Yeah, we just want to know what the total dose is.
The total dose is.
Yeah.
That's a very good lesson. Very good. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the water bottles, because, like I mentioned in my book, In Hydrate, we talk about this. We have a whole chapter. You helped with that chapter. We love the tablets because you get a consistent dose with the tablet, right? You know what you're going to get out of that tablet. So if I put a tablet in 4 to 8 ounces of water, I know the dose that I'm going to get. If I'm using the water bottle, that's using electrolysis. The probes or the mechanisms inside can get mineralized, which can affect the dose.
Sure, there's just a lot of variables. First, there's just differences between bottle to bottle, of course, right? Every bottle producing the exact same amount of molecular hydrogen. There's user error. Did you fill the water all the way to that line, or did you leave a lot of extra headspace? Did it develop all the pressure, or did it not? So there's a lot of user error, even with a perfect performing bottle, right? And then maybe you had it for a while and you went on vacation and the membrane dried up, and now the membrane doesn't work as well. Well, now the concentration of hydrogen is going to be lower because the membrane got dried up. Or, to your point, you had mineral depositions on the membrane, and now it's also not working well. So there's a lot of variables with that.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
So unless you're testing it, if you have an at-home concentration kit to test the hydrogen in it, you really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's the only concern. So I'm not against them. I have a number of them, actually.
Oh, yeah. You can send them every day.
Yeah, probably. I do. So it's not that I'm saying that they're, completely ineffective. It's just those are the caveats you have to consider versus a tablet. It's a fresh tablet every time. And so you just drop it in and you're getting a
chemical reaction. You know what you're going to get. It's consistent.
Yeah, and you get the benefits of magnesium because at the end you get bioavailable magnesium.
And it's a consistent price, right? You know, it's about $1 a tablet. We know that with these electrolysis machines, let's just say, for example, Kangen. A lot of people know that name, Kangen. That's an electrolysis machine that actually was being sold a while back for its benefits of being an alkaline machine, we've since learned that it wasn't the pH that was being created that was giving people the benefits. It was the hydrogen gas that was being produced in it. So now people are selling these electrolysis machines as hydrogen machines, but they can be expensive, right? I mean...
Yeah, and that's one of the downsides. I mean, there are people that figure out how to make it work, right? But they were designed for alkaline water, not for molecular hydrogen. They were developed well before the research on hydrogen gas was really established and really there. They didn't know why this water had a benefit. There were all the other ideas about microclustering and surface tension and pH and all this stuff.
And you were one of the first people that posed the question, could it be the hydrogen gas?
Yeah. I did a major study on that. We published it in the International Journal of Molecular Sciences. If you look it up, electrolyzed reduced water, there's 2 reviews that we did on it. And these are major reviews of our research, but other people's research as well, including the largest company in Japan who produces this alkaline ionized water. And they did lots of independent research that they published demonstrating the same thing, that hydrogen gas was the exclusive therapeutic agent in the alkaline ionized water and not these other properties, right? So they can be expensive, right? And then you have to balance between this really high pH that some people have had an adverse effect for different reasons too, with trying to make sure you get therapeutic levels of hydrogen. But you really do want to be testing the concentration of hydrogen to make sure that the doses and concentrations you're getting are equivalent to what we provide in the clinical studies. Because again, they were not developed for hydrogen water, they're developed for alkaline water. But we know that they can provide benefits because there's research on them and we measure the concentration. You just have to maintain the electrodes to be clean and so on.
And just to distinguish too, because there is, I know this isn't your field of expertise, but in some conversations I've had with Robert Slovak, if you go back to Hydrate episodes with Robert Slovak, we have an episode just on the difference between alkaline and alkalizing the body. There's a huge difference between drinking alkaline water and what actually alkalizes your body. So a good example of that is lemon juice. Outside of the body, it will test as an acid, but it can actually alkalize the body. And so we're looking at what alkalizes, not what's just alkaline outside of it.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated, this part of the physiology, but the fact is with alkaline water, you cannot alkalize your body with that because alkaline water is not a buffer. And that's why you can add just a little bit of, lemon juice or soda or something, and it immediately neutralizes the pH because it's not a buffer. Versus baking soda, a teaspoon of baking soda will neutralize as much acid as over 10,000 liters of alkaline water at, that's a pH of, 90 or so, because it is a buffer. So lemon juice, it is an acid. It's a bronzed acid. It has citric acid and things in it, so it donates a hydrogen ion. But the reason why people will say, it has alkalizing effects is because you have the conjugate base, and when it's metabolized by the body, it's able to be a clean fuel and doesn't produce an excess amount of hydrogen ions like certain proteins, certain sulfur-containing amino acids, and other things would do. And that's not a problem with the lemon juice. So that's why lemon juice is not necessarily alkalizing. It doesn't have an acidifying effect like certain foods will. But this whole idea of we need to alkalize the body and everything is kind of a whole different topic, and it's not really rooted in a lot of science anyways.
It's a long conversation to have, and I think there's still a lot of research to be done on it. And we can also go into the whole topic that we had talked about with antioxidants, and there's just so much that goes into it. But right now we're talking about hydrogen. But I wanted to bring that up because it is a fallacy that a lot of people believe that they can alkalize their body by drinking alkaline water, something that's been sold to a lot of people. And I still hear many people mention it. Oh, I drink alkaline water, like they're doing something really good for themselves to alkalize their body.
Right. And may not be good. And then, in fact, the body can alkalize the body on its own really well. There are certain conditions where helping it with like infusions of sodium bicarbonate can be beneficial. In other cases where it's harmful. There are case studies people have died by alkalizing their bodies. So it's something we have to really be cautious about. But fortunately, you can't really do it with alkaline water.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at people that have cancer, their body is usually swinging from, it's very acidic, but towards the end, it can become too alkaline.
Yeah, it really depends on the cancer cell and what's going on. But actually, the cancer, because it uses anaerobic glycolysis, it produces a lot of acid, and acid is very damaging to the cell. And so the tumors will actually develop an ability to secrete the acid away from outside of the cell, and so the tumor itself becomes highly alkaline, and the process of alkalosis is a way for the cancer to progress.
Yeah.
And so tumors can actually be extremely alkaline, and they're secreting a lot of acid. So it's much more complicated than the simple.
These are topics that we get to keep bringing up, and I love that the listeners are so intrigued by this, because maybe there's somebody out there who wants to do more research on this, because it deserves more research. These topics that we're talking about, we deserve more clinical studies.
A lot of there is a lot of clinical studies on this area, and a lot of it has been researched, and a lot of it is already well accepted. There is no controversy amongst the real science. There's only controversy about people selling a quack treatment.
I think there's a lot more to be explored, though.
There is a lot more to be explored. It's just there are some situations that are so well debunked.
Yeah.
And so well, like the idea of drinking alkaline water to alkalize your body.
Yeah.
It's not controversial. We don't need clinical studies to determine if drinking alkaline water is going to alkalize our bodies.
That's a big marketing scheme that people have been sold, and many people still believe. And that's why we're here. That's why we have this show, is to really help people understand the science of it and how to distinguish for themselves. Once you have information and you have wisdom and you have knowledge, then you can make the best decision for yourself.
Yeah, it's informed consent.
Thank you. But when we are told something that isn't true and we're making our decisions based on
false information,
then we can really hurt ourselves.
Right.
And so that's why we have the show, and we bring people like you on to help us really understand it so that we can make good decisions for ourselves. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the water bottles, the alkalizer machines. We talked about the tablets. Let's talk a little bit about the inhalation. There's different machines out there. How do we know which one to pick? Which one gives us the best therapeutic dose and is safe?
Yeah. So this is a big topic because the research on hydrogen gas inhalation is growing very strong. There's a lot of clinical studies out there, and it's something that can potentially revolutionize mainstream medicine because it's so simple and safe to be used. Now, in these studies, they typically will make sure the concentration of hydrogen gas is being inhaled is between 1% to 4%.
Okay.
And so some critical foundational pieces that people need to understand with this, okay? Number one, to be therapeutic, you have to be 1% or higher, okay? And there are a number of studies showing that 2% or 3% is more effective than 4%. Now, that's important. 4% and above is flammable and explosive. So that's perfect because we want to be 4%, between 1% to 4%. That is the band. That's a therapeutic band between 1% to 4%, maybe around 2% to 3%, 4% or something for an ideal concentration. And right now, there's a lot of machines in the market. We have a nasal cannula and you inhale hydrogen gas. And that's not the same as how many studies are done. They don't use a machine. They make the entire environment that exact 1%, 2%, 3%, or 4% hydrogen gas. So, for example, we're in this building right here, right? We are inhaling 21% oxygen. And it doesn't matter if we put a treadmill in here and started running, breathing a lot more, or what we were doing. We would still inhale 21% oxygen. And in fact, it wouldn't make sense for somebody to say, what is the flow rate of oxygen or something, because it doesn't matter. We're breathing the air. Whatever we're breathing is what the percent of oxygen is. When we do the animal studies, we'll take the cage and we will have a hose with a precise amount of hydrogen gas, exactly 2% hydrogen gas, connected to the animal cage with a vent. And that way, inside the animal cage, everything's exactly 2% hydrogen gas. You don't put a nasal cannula on the rodent, right? Or something like that. It's just hydrogen gas, that is that percent. Now, in the major clinical studies, like the one with post-cardiac arrest syndrome in Japan, they would use a face mask. And the face mask would be connected to a tank of hydrogen gas that is exactly 2% hydrogen. That means that every inhalation that they take comes from that tank. So we have 21% oxygen gas, nitrogen gas, of course, with 2% hydrogen gas. And that should be very effective. But in this way, you can start to understand that every inhalation they take would come from the tank or come from this precise amount of hydrogen gas. Because if you have a nasal cannula in, what's going to happen? You take a breath, and that entrains or captures a lot of the outside air, comes in, and it dilutes that hydrogen gas.
Yeah.
So the concentration of hydrogen gas is no longer 100%, because it's being often it's giving you at 100% hydrogen gas. It's not 100% hydrogen gas once you get it into your lungs. If it were, you die from hypoxia, right? But you dilute it down. You dilute it down so much that it's often below 1%. Not even therapeutic. So you can do the calculation. When we breathe, we take our first inhalation. That very first part of the inhalation is fast. That's called that's the first inspiratory phase. Okay, it's inspiration. That's the inspiratory phase. That's very quick, right? And then towards the end of the inspiration phase, you can see you kind of start slowing down, right? So you were fast, and then it's just really slow, and then it kind of stops, and then you exhale, and then it's fast, and then it stops, right? So you get this. You see what that curve is going to look like, right? This is the waveform. It's the K factor, the waveform factor of breathing. It's triangular breathing. And during that part, though, you dilute the concentration of hydrogen often below 1%. And so they have to do this in medical gas research, like with oxygen therapy, for example. They're not providing, only a few hundred milliliters of oxygen gas per minute. They're providing like several liters or more, sometimes 50 liters of oxygen gas per minute, right? That's like 10 to 100 times more than what we use for hydrogen gas.
Yeah.
And because they have to make sure that you are supplying enough hydrogen gas to match the peak inspiratory flow, right? So that inhalation, okay? Now, again, so we have a nasal cannula. What will happen is when you take that inhalation, that first inhalation, you're diluting the concentration of hydrogen gas so low, it's no longer therapeutic. That's going to be one problem. And then that's assuming you are actually inhaling with your nose. Most people aren't doing that.
Breathing through their mouth.
They're breathing through their mouth. They take and it's just sitting there in the nose, and they're getting hardly any of it, right? So they're just breathing through their nose, or they're going to, or they exhale through their mouth and their nose, right? So you're losing hydrogen gas there as well. So all of these variables make it really difficult to ensure somebody's getting a therapeutic dose of hydrogen.
Wow.
So one of the ways to ensure you get a therapeutic dose is to bump up the flow rate really high.
Okay.
So now you're talking about getting up to 2 liters of hydrogen gas per minute. Now, when you take that inhalation fast and you're losing some of the hydrogen gas, maybe not breathing completely through your nose, and all this stuff is happening, you get a concentration between, say 1 to 4% is what it can be, let's say. Now you're therapeutic. Finally, you're therapeutic. But guess what also? It is very flammable, because it is a high flow rate of hydrogen gas, and so that flammable plume is large, right? And
that's scary.
Exactly, it's scary.
That could be.
Especially if it's with, and like I just said, when you take that first inspiratory flow, this first inspiration, now the concentration is maybe hitting that 1-2% or whatever. But towards that very end, the concentration is all of a sudden 20%. Well, 20% hydrogen gas, that's very dangerous and flammable.
Yeah.
And there have been accidents, and it's been reported in the literature and in the news, where people have had explosions, like facial fractures. Oh. You can imagine, like in one case in a clinic, somebody was inhaling, and it was a large flow rate machine. This is in Japan. There's over 12 case reports that was documented in Japan, where people have gone to the ICU in different places because they're inhaling this gas and something crazy happens, right? Just some static discharge, whatever, and it ignites and causes this explosion, and you get like a facial fracture, or or explode even into their airways, right? And then like one cancer patient ended up coughing blood and had to get rushed to the ICU because it causes a very flammable mixture. And again, you just don't know. So you have kind of one individual, because of their nasal patency, or how much like the congestion is or whatever, it's not very good. And so you have to have a high flow rate. And so do all this stuff. So now you can get a therapeutic dose of hydrogen. And then maybe somebody else in their family, or maybe even them on a different day, where they're going to really focus on going these slower inhale, and doing all this stuff. Now the concentration is really high. It's flammable. Now they're just like a walking bomb. Right? So there's this ratio between giving a high enough flow rate to make sure it's therapeutic, but if it's too high, then you are going to absolutely create a serious flammability risk.
Yeah.
Right? And so on the one hand, it's tempting, okay, well, I'm just going to have this flow rate and I'm going to just breathe really, really slow and then faster exhales. That's also not healthy, though. Depending on the time of breathing, but that's this inspiratory exchange ratio that's not resting. That's like more of a sympathetic state where you just do it, right? That's not a very relaxed breathing state, right? And that's going to be really hard to maintain for, an hour of inhalation, right? And so you want to be able to just do normal breathing. Well, in these studies, you can do that because you have a whole face mask. Every air all the gas you inhale is exactly precisely controlled, right? So, and I told you just a little bit before, but this is, how do we solve this problem? This is something I've been working on for over 7 years with Alex Tarnava, actually, how do we figure this out? Where there's another inhalation machine. People can check it out, inhaleh2.com. And this machine circumvents all those problems because it allows you to, regardless of how you breathe, you're able to inhale a precise amount of hydrogen gas that you decide, from 0.5% to 4%. And that means it's always going to be therapeutic every breath. And it's never going to be flammable. You can't accidentally misuse it or intentionally misuse it.
Thank God.
Right? If you can imagine, maybe you're going to be really safe doing all this stuff with it, but then you have kids or neighbors' kids come over, like, hey,
or
let's try this.
Or letting an elderly parent or grandparent.
Yeah, or whatever. They're just like, there are people who have smoked with these machines.
Oh my God.
They're just not thinking. They're like, oh, it's fine, And you know what? A lot of times it is. A lot of times you probably will be just fine.
Yeah.
But it's that one in, a 1,000, a million? I don't know. How many faces have to get blown off before somebody thinks, this is not a good idea.
Right.
Right. So in this case, it's impossible to intentionally cause an explosion. And this way you can do research in major clinical settings, in hospitals, in your own home, right, and not have a bomb. And you can precisely control the concentration of hydrogen. Because like I said, some studies, such as the major study that started all of this in 2007, found that 2% hydrogen gas was more effective than 4% hydrogen gas. So these other machines, okay, now you get a high flow rate, so you can make sure you get to that, 1-2% hydrogen, but maybe that day you're just breathing better through your nose, you're doing stuff, and so actually you're averaging closer to 4 or 5% hydrogen gas. So now you're getting to the flammable level, and you're at 4%, and 4% is not as effective as 2%. So you can't even get a precise concentration of hydrogen.
Wow.
With this machine, you can literally control exactly the precise concentration of hydrogen. And there it is. You can get it. And this is so important too, because when we think about minute ventilation, which is just how much air are we breathing, like we're sitting here, how much air are we breathing at rest? Now, in respiratory physiology, this minute ventilation, we say that resting ventilation is around 5 to 8 liters per minute. But that is at rest, full rest, like laying down in a bed and resting, not when you are sitting at home, maybe watching something, maybe doing some light typing, some gesturing or whatever, your minute ventilation could be double that. If your minute ventilation is double that, then the amount of hydrogen gas you need is also double that.
Yeah.
So you can get a machine that when you're at nighttime, let's say it's therapeutic, but during the day, it's not therapeutic. Because at nighttime, you're like really relaxed, you're breathing calmly, everything is good. Now you're getting that, let's say 2% hydrogen gas, right? Everything's, for the most part, is great. Now, in the middle of the day, you're still at rest, you're just sitting down and you're typing, you're watching something, you're just kind of being alert, you're talking here and there, but your ventilation is doubled. Now, you're not even therapeutic, so you're just wasting your time. Or let's reverse this. You decide, no, I want to make sure it's always therapeutic. So you get a machine with a higher flow rate. Now you can be out there typing, doing stuff, and you're still getting that, 3-4% hydrogen gas. And I'm going to use it at night too. And now you're fully rest, calm, relaxed. And now you have a constant concentration of hydrogen of 10 to 20% around your face.
Wow.
And now you run the risk of blowing your face,
Flammability,
right? Or even potentially hypoxia, depending on how you're breathing with your nose. So there's so many problems.
Too many variables that,
right?
Yeah,
this
that
is why
you can't control, or you might try to control, but
then the next day is different, right?
Yeah.
So at every session, so if you use an nasal, which you can do, that means every session you really need to measure what is your minute ventilation, what is your mean inspiratory flow, and then what is your targeted FiH2, your fraction of inspired hydrogen you want, and then you adjust the flow rate to be exactly that, and then you maintain that respiratory dynamics for the entire hour session. And if you do all that, then okay, you can do that. Otherwise, this other machine is designed specifically so you can do precise clinical research and therapeutic effects.
Okay, I'm sold on this machine. I'm getting this machine. We'll have it in the show notes. And if you would like a family price, then just type in the code HYDRATE and you'll get our Hydrate hookup. Tyler, to close, I have a question for you. What is something that you believed in your line of research about hydrogen that you once held to be true that you no longer believe?
I first believed that hydrogen gas would react with hydroxyl radicals and convert them to water, and that was a primary mechanism of how hydrogen gas would provide therapeutic effects. And a lot of people in the research today still believe that hydrogen would directly react with hydroxyl radicals. But I no longer believe that.
And what changed your mind?
I study more chemistry, and we look at the second order reaction kinetics, and we can see that the reaction rate order, or the kinetics of hydrogen gas reacting with hydroxyl radical, which is very fast, but it's several orders of magnitude slower than the hydroxyl radical reacting with anything else. So the rate that hydrogen gas would react is unfavorable. It's easier for the hydroxyl radical to react with pretty much anything else than it is the hydrogen gas, especially when we consider the concentration of hydrogen gas is only several micromolar, if it even reaches that high. But in this case, it's when we put those two together, it's very unlikely. So this really further illustrates that hydrogen gas is not a radical scavenging antioxidant. It is a redox adaptogenic signaling molecule that influences gene expression and the mitochondria. And in turn, that's how it regulates our redox homeostasis in other areas.
Whoa. I love that. We love modulation in many areas. Thank you, Tyler, for being here. If you want to learn more about Tyler or follow him on Instagram and learn about his research and the things that he's doing, you can go into the show notes. You'll find all of the links to his website. He also has an institute, NIH Institute.
Yeah, Molecular Hydrogen Institute.
Molecular Hydrogen Institute.
Yeah.
Where you can take courses.
Yeah, we have courses, all this stuff. For people who are interested just in basic science stuff and learning about hydrogen, it's not just hydrogen, but come check out our courses. We have people from 8 years old to 80 years old, PhDs to non-scientists, come and take these courses. They have loved them. And just go through some basic principles of chemistry, knowledge, and then really teaching you how to evaluate things for yourself. And join our MHI community. We're a science-based nonprofit. So with this MHI, we don't promote or endorse any products or anything. We're just focused on research, education, and awareness of hydrogen as a medical gas. So this is totally separate and apart from Inhalation, which I'm the chief scientific officer of. So it's kind of exciting because this is the first time in 16 years that I have officially endorsed a product. But this is something that I developed for research and for really, it's what is needed, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, check out molecularhydrogeninstitute.org and learn about the research. And we have all these studies there. Join our community, take our courses. You'll love it.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Tyler, for this amazing conversation. Till next time.